I've been dating my girlfriend for 3 years now, I'll nickname her Nikki. It started innocently enough when I commented on one of her Instagram stories, and we started chatting from there. Eventually, I got her number and then Snapchat, and after a week, we met in person. We started hanging out right after the holidays in January, and Valentine's Day was already coming up. It was nice to have started talking to a girl around that time so that I wouldn't feel the dread of being alone on that annoying holiday. But as Valentine's Day approached and Nikki and I were a few dates in, she confided in me about a stalker situation she'd been dealing with. The man's name was Ben. He was a guy a few years older than Nikki who happened to go to the same commuter college as her. They met in class for a group project, and he followed her around campus a few times. She never involved the police, shockingly, even after this guy found out where she lived and sent her a bunch of creepy texts, which she ignored. She said she never blocked the number because she wanted to see how far he would go without getting the hint. When I asked why she was choosing now to bring this to my attention, she said it was because he had started reaching out to her again, specifically for Valentine's Day. As you can see here, he started ramping up the texting again as Valentine's Day approached. She continued to just ignore it and let the texts pile up. But he took it to the next level when he left a box of Russell Stover chocolates on her doorstep. She knew it was from him because he texted her, "I hope you like the gift I left you." That was when she decided to put an end to it and replied to him with a long message, which I won't share for her privacy, but in short, she told him he needed help, that she was seeing someone now, and to leave her alone. There are a number of ways to get someone's address these days, but she was scared that he had gotten it by following her home one day. I did my best to reassure her that I wouldn't let him do anything to her. Fast forward a few days, and Nikki sent me a concerning screenshot. It was a screenshot of some texts from a fake number asking if the guy she was seeing was me. Me. As in, he wrote my name. Now I felt involved, and that made me feel moderately uncomfortable. Up to this point, all I'd heard about this guy was that he was a very creepy and overly persistent texter who had potentially followed the girl I was seeing home. And now, he was texting her from fake numbers, bringing up my name. It was reaching the point where Nikki was close to calling the police if this didn't stop. I told her I'd go to the police station with her if he reached out one more time. Fast forward to Valentine's Day, it was on a Friday that year. Nikki and I went out to eat at a nice restaurant that sat on the water. We had an outside table because the weather was nice. As we ate, we both noticed a guy sitting on a bench outside of the dining area, near the parking lot, with a hat conspicuously pulled down over his face, as if he were hiding. Nikki made a joke, "What if that's Ben?" We laughed, but then he slightly tilted his head in our direction as we were looking at him. A second later, he quickly looked away and, moments later, got up and walked away. We weren't laughing anymore, now we actually questioned the chances of that being him. But after a few minutes, the conversation shifted to something else, and we enjoyed the rest of our time there. Afterward, we wanted to keep hanging out. It was Valentine's Day, after all, but her parents were home. I had the place to myself, so we went back to my rental house. We were on the couch, getting a bit more intimate, when Nikki suddenly pulled away from me and said, "What was that?" I heard it too, something from outside in the backyard. "Want me to go check?" I asked. She nodded. I stepped out onto the backyard patio, expecting to hear some animal scurrying off in reaction to my presence. I slipped on my slides and walked around, looking for anything that could have fallen over. Then I found what had made the noise. The entire stack of beach chairs that had been leaning against the house had been knocked over. I had no idea how that could happen unless someone or something bumped into them. There wasn't even the slightest breeze that night. I looked around at the bushes that encompassed the yard. And then, as if my brain immediately spotted something out of place, my vision locked onto something tall in the bushes. My neck jutted forward as I literally tried to focus in and get a better look. I stepped forward a few paces, and then I had an OSHT moment when I realized, it was someone standing in the bushes. By this point, he had seen me notice him. "Who is that?" I yelled. The guy started quickly coming out from the bushes, at a speed that made me take it as a threat, as if he were about to charge at me. I took the chance to tackle him while he was still struggling with the twigs and branches. I yelled at him to stay down multiple times. Then I shouted for Nikki until she came outside, "Call the police." I screamed, the guy on the ground struggled, trying to break free, but I had him pinned down. When Nikki saw him, she gasped, "Oh my God. Yes, that's him." It was Ben, the guy who had been harassing her. And what's worse, at that moment, I realized, he was wearing the same colored shirt as the guy with the cap from the restaurant. The police arrived and put him in cuffs. He was charged with trespassing, and Nikki took the opportunity to show the officers all the harassing and obsessive messages she'd been receiving from him. Since he was already being arrested, Nikki pressed charges for stalking and harassment. Ultimately, he paid a fine and was given a misdemeanor. She also got a protection order against him, meaning that if he ever contacted her again, he would be arrested on the spot. Ben was the ultimate creep. Thankfully, he's at least halfway smart enough to never have contacted her again.
4 years ago, on Valentine's Day, my boyfriend and I planned a nice dinner together, like most couples do. As we walked into the restaurant, I noticed a couple outside, weirdly staring at us. I nudged my boyfriend slightly as we entered, and he gave his name to be added to the waiting list. The host informed us there would be a 45-minute wait and that they would text us when our table was ready. My boyfriend suggested we pass the time by playing mini golf across the street. As we walked back to his car, the woman from the couple stood up, raised her hand, and introduced herself as Mrs. Gretty. Something about it felt off. I looked at my boyfriend, and when the woman kept her hand out, I hesitantly shook it to avoid being rude. She explained that she and her husband were photographers and thought we were a great-looking couple. She insisted we should follow them to their studio, claiming it was only 5 minutes away and that the restaurant's wait time would be long. She even offered to drive us there, saying she didn't have a business card on her. Red flags immediately went off, and my boyfriend politely declined, stating that we had plans. The woman gave us one of the creepiest smiles as she sat back down next to her husband, who hadn't said a single word. We got into the car, and I told my boyfriend how unsettling the encounter was. At mini golf, we laughed it off. But I still felt uneasy. The place wasn't big, so the front door was visible from anywhere. About 5 rounds in, I heard the entrance bell ring. I turned to look, and my heart sank. It was the same couple. The woman scanned the room until our eyes met, and then she gave me the creepiest smile. I whispered to my boyfriend, who turned to see them getting their equipment. I told him I felt uncomfortable and suggested we wait in the car since our table would be ready soon. He agreed, and as we turned around, the couple was right behind us, smiling eerily wide. "Crazy how we both ended up here," Mrs. Gretty said. Then, for the first time, her husband spoke. "We should face each other. Gretty versus Rod." My boyfriend froze. His last name was Rod. How did they know that? We declined and quickly left. Later, we went back to the restaurant for dinner. As my boyfriend went to the restroom, I thought I saw that woman peeking around a corner, but I convinced myself it was just paranoia. After dinner, we started the drive to his place, which required going down a long road surrounded by trees. Soon, we noticed a car following us. I pointed it out, and my boyfriend pulled into a CVS parking lot. We both got out to use the restroom. When we came back, the car was gone, so we continued to his house. About 5 minutes into the wooded road, we heard a loud pop. Both of his front tires had blown. My boyfriend panicked, piecing everything together. He turned off the engine, cut the lights, and urgently told me to get out of the car. Confused and scared, I hesitated, but he grabbed my hand and ran into the woods. We hid behind trees and bushes as he called the police, explaining our location and situation. He quickly hung up as we heard a car approaching. The engine stopped, and a chillingly familiar voice called out, "You took too long." A car door slammed, followed by the vehicle speeding away. We stayed hidden until the police arrived a couple of minutes later. We explained everything, but nothing ever came of it. We never found out who they were or what they wanted. Now, 4 years later, my boyfriend and I are married, with a terrifying story to tell our kids.
During the fall 2018 semester, I was taking online classes at a prestigious college. I planned to transfer to my hometown's four-year university in the winter, but I still wanted to make friends and maybe even find someone to date. That's when I met a girl on Tinder. We had a lot in common and started dating. Everything was great until she returned from Thanksgiving break. Her attitude had completely changed. She had always been sarcastic, but now she was downright mean. Her playful teasing had turned aggressive, though never physical, and it didn't feel right. I assumed it was just stress from finals. She went home for winter break, and though we stayed in touch daily, she eventually decided to break up with me, saying she missed her home and family too much. It was an easy out for me because, in hindsight, there were many issues in our relationship that I had overlooked. By Valentine's Day, I was feeling lonely. I reactivated Tinder and started chatting with a girl named Alex. She wasn't into bars, just like me, and we hit it off. We met on Valentine's Day, grabbed McDonald's, watched a movie, and walked around downtown before heading back to my apartment. Everything went smoothly. We had sex, and she asked if she could stay over since it was snowing. I said yes. Around 3 a.m., I woke up as she got out of bed. I saw her head toward the bathroom but was too tired to care and went back to sleep. At 5:30 a.m., I woke up again and she wasn't in bed. Her clothes were still on the floor, so I knew she hadn't left. Then, I heard a creak. Turning to look, I saw Alex standing in the corner of my bedroom, facing the wall. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. My heart pounded. I turned on a dim lamp and walked over, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. As soon as I did, she spun around at an unnatural speed and started screaming and hitting me. Her face was emotionless. I stumbled back onto my bed as she continued attacking me for about 30 seconds. Then, without warning, she grabbed her clothes and ran out, leaving the front door wide open. A foul smell wafted from the bathroom. I turned on the light and found destruction. My shower curtain was ripped down, my medicine bag was scattered, and the worst part? She had smeared feces on my mirror. I called the police, but there wasn't much they could do. Her Tinder and Snapchat profiles were deleted. I only had one filtered screenshot of her face. Later, my friend Rob, who had the same major as her, told me he had never seen her in class. That night, Rob stayed over for safety. At 3 a.m., we heard someone trying to open my front door. After a minute, it stopped. I checked the peephole, no one was there. Nothing has happened since, but the memory still haunts me.
If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, always trust your instincts, because you never know who might be watching. Stay safe, and until next time, keep your doors locked.